All right, so we had a great episode a couple weeks ago with Jazz, Mariana, and Danielle, and we're ready for some more women. But it looks like we might have some extras this week. But we're going to start in Canada. Oh, Canada, I can sing it. Tisha Symes, you're up in Hamilton near Guelph in Ontario. You there, Tisha?
I'm here. How are you?
I'm doing all right. So, you have now set the all-time record. We thought Jazz did it to us a couple weeks ago for the most pictures sent. Can you just explain what you're, I guess, what are you fascinated with taking pictures before we even start?
I am a picture fanatic. I take pictures of everything for the sole reason my friends call me Dory from Finding Nemo. I will forget why I walked into a room. I am the most forgetful person in the world, and I love memories. So I take pictures and keep pictures and I win pictures of every moment of my life because I want to have those memories. I want to remember all these memories.
So Jazz sent I think 75 or almost 80 shots. You have now sent 89 pictures. We're going to do our best. We've got a few of the same horses, which we'd love to delve into with you. But, first let's start, I guess, what was your start, I guess, in the industry or with horses, as a kid? What generation are you?
I'm actually third generation. My dad, Charles Symes, trained horses, and his dad, Cecil Symes, owned and trained a little bit. So yeah, I'm third generation. My parents took me to the racetrack, actually, the day I was released from the hospital from being born. Like, I'm 2 days old, on the back of a horse at Amherst Raceway.
So, do you have early memories, in the barn, I guess, with your grandpa or with your dad and the family?
Again, I would love to tell you that I do, but
you don't.
I'm Dory. I honestly don't have any memories. My grandfather passed away when I was 6. So I really don't have any memories other than the pictures that have been shown and I'm lucky enough to have and keep. But I don't have a lot of memories of him at all, really.
But
now, obviously, I have a lot of memories of Dad. I grew up working at the track with Dad and beside Dad. But no, I don't have a lot of memories of my grandfather. So I love to hear stories from people that do remember him and were around when he was around. But I don't have a lot of memories of him.
So what track did you grow up on? That's the question to ask.
Yeah, so my home track would be Truro, Nova Scotia. That's where we went every Sunday growing up. There was a racetrack in Amherst, Nova Scotia. It's about 20 minutes from Spring Hill. That's from Spring Hill, Nova Scotia. They didn't really race. I think they did matinee races and a little bit when I was 5 or 6. But Truro would have been where we spent most of our time at this early age. And then we went to Charlottetown. We had a stable, Dad and I, in Charlottetown almost every summer from the time I was probably 10 until 14 or 15.
So then I guess when did the responsibility start being handed over to you? Did you branch off and just start grooming for other people? You're eventually going to become a trainer, but where, I guess, did you learn most of your tricks of the trade, I guess, besides your father and some from your grandfather, I guess, till you were 6?
So we went, like I said, we were in Charlottetown for quite some time every summer, and then we branched off when we went to Maine, Dad and I. And we did the Maine circuit. So we did all the fairs, Bangor, Scarborough, just Dad and I. We had a barn of 10 or 15, and we had a lot of fun. Maine's a lot of fun. It's a different way of life. The slogan of Maine is the way life should be, and it hits it right on the head. It's a lot of fun there, and Dad decided one summer, here's 3 or 4, you do them on your own. So I just had one end of the barn, and I did those guys by myself, and he gave me a lot of freedom, and he said, just, you do those ones, help me obviously with the other ones, because he couldn't do it on his own. As much as he would probably like to tell everybody he did, he still needed me. But yeah, he gave me a couple, and I did them on my own, and I just got the itch. I loved doing it on my own, but Dad had suggested, maybe you branch out and go work for somebody else, see how someone else does it. There's so many other perspectives in the business. People do everything different. And he suggested, why don't you go out and work for someone that has some experience with some, really nice horses. My dad, he races claimers, old crippled horses, other people's problems, which is awesome, and it's a lot of fun, and I love to try to fix old broken down racehorses. But it was nice for him to push me out and say, go learn off of somebody else. So the opportunity came, actually. We were in Charlottetown at the time, and we were, Dad and I were fighting. It's always hard to work with your family. And Ian Moore walked in the barn. He was our vet at the time. And he said, I see you guys are getting into it. You want a job? Dad and I were just bickering back and forth at each other. And I said, yes. And Dad roared from the shed row, no! And I was like, 2 weeks later, I was in Ontario with Ian Moore. His daughters were going back to school, university. It was Shadow Play's 3-year-old year, so 2008, I guess it would have been.
Wow.
And he needed somebody to look after Shadow Play. Well, Chelsea went back to school, so I jumped right in head first. And, yeah, I was in Ontario for like 2 weeks, and then we were on the road, Grand Circuit. Jumped right in head first. Went from the little main fair track right to the Grand Circuit with Ian.
So have you become, at that time, I guess, one of the, I don't want to say this in the wrong way, but upper echelon, kind of caretakers that, kind of specialize in those 1 or 2 horses, or were you just with that one horse?
We still have, there's probably 7 or 8 2-year-olds there too. So I was with the whole barn, but specialized with him. And when he went on the road, I went on the road. We went to, Balmoral. He won the American National at Balmoral. We went to Maywood, Windy City. He won the Windy City. We were Meadowlands, Breeders' Crown Elimination. So yeah, when we were on the road, it was just him. But when we were back in Ontario, it was the whole barn. Funny story about that, actually. When he went to the jug as a 3-year-old, I was working for Ian at the time and looking after Shadow Play in Ontario, and he left me at home. He knew that the barn needed to be looked after, and he trusted me to look after the barn instead of inviting me down to go to the jug. And Shadow Play actually went and won the Little Brown Jug that year, and I had to watch from home.
What about these other horses like Rockin' in Heaven, and you got State Treasurer, and like just then you just kind of fell into all these great horses. I mean, what's it like?
I really did fall into them. Like, I got so lucky working with Ian. We had a pile of really nice horses, but those 2 guys are where my heart is. State Treasurer, like, he just took me on a ride that is, I'll never forget it. Like, world records and track records. He set the track record at Dayton. He was world record in the U.S. Pacing Championship at the Meadowlands. Like, that was a ride that I'll never forget. I remember being at the Meadowlands with Shadow Play and thinking, like, oh, how cool would it be to be on that board, like, to win a track record. And State Treasurer did it that year, 47 at the Meadowlands for the U.S. Pacing Championship.
Wow.
Rockin' in Heaven, I looked after him as a groom for Ian. I got him when he was just right off the Harrisburg truck as a yearling. I looked after him for his 2-year-old, 3-year-old, and 4-year-old year with Ian. And I actually got in a car accident. I was T-boned. And I wasn't able to go to Florida for the winter with Ian's stable. And Rockin' in Heaven's owners decided that he wasn't going to go to Florida for his 5-year-old year. So they called me and they said, would you be interested in training Mo? That's what we call him, Mo. And I'm like, wait, what? And they said, well, we heard you're not going to Florida and you're in that car accident. We're just wondering if you would be interested in taking him. He's not known anybody else. His wife, like, I was his only groom. I think he'd do really well with you. And I was just shocked. I couldn't believe that his owners were going to give me, like, that opportunity. Like, he's a very nice horse. He had a record of 50 at the time. I think he had, like, 480,000 made. My life was just turned upside down in a car accident, and here I'm handed this beautiful horse.
Do you think there's, like, certain connections that people have with certain horses, and they should stay with them throughout their campaigns? I mean, that's what I've learned. They just stay with that same groom or that same trainer, and they just stay on that regime, and they're just brought along with, like, golden gloves. They're just babied through everything.
Absolutely.
And that's the way it should be.
Mama's boy.
Yeah, but they're champion horses and they're champion bred. That's the way that it should be, right?
Yeah, absolutely, but it takes a caretaker. Yes, they're champion bred and they're meant to be champion horses, but it takes a good caretaker to make them last. This old boy, he's 9 now. He's been under my care since he was 5, and we are 40,000 away from $1 million. He took a new lifetime record for me 2 years ago. Like, it takes a lot of care, and I think women in the industry are really underlooked because women. We're in a male-dominated sport, but it takes a kind hand and the extra care for these older horses to last, to make it to be a millionaire.
So you think the caretaking is obviously one of the most important aspects, and women, obviously, we talked about this earlier, and I've, having these discussions with people later in this episode, women make up the backbone of this industry. I mean, they're the ones that are behind the scenes doing that hard work, taking care of these horses.
Absolutely. If you look at, through the paddock at Mohawk on any given night, it's three-quarters women. I think, I'm not being sexist, but women are more compassionate. They're more patient. They're more caring. It's not about the sport with us. It's about the animal. It's the animal first before second.
If you see, let's say a male, and I'm not going to be chauvinistic here, but you see a male listed as a trainer, do you think 5 times out of 10 or, maybe even more, that second trainer might be a woman? Maybe his wife even?
Maybe, quite possibly.
Because you see a lot of father and, wife, or, wife and mother, or, there could be some type of interrelationship with their family where somebody's taking care of the kids and then, somebody's doing the training and then they switch off, and, you hear about things like that in the family. The husband could be listed and the wife could come in and out, and then they've got the next generation of kids ready to take over those responsibilities. I mean, there's all types of things that happen in this industry, and you're third generation. So, is there anything else you wanted to, bring up before we try to end this episode? I mean, this is just, it's so interesting how everybody has different insight in different ways and how they've been brought up, and it's you're right. You were you had it was in your blood, but then you were thrown in with these just pristine horses and given that opportunity. And it just
given the great opportunity, and it's the bond, I think. The bonds that you have with these horses. And
yeah, but look at yourself. Look at yourself at your age now and what you're doing as a trainer. I mean, most people don't get these opportunities, and now you're a trainer, and now you're going to teach other people, and that's what it's about. It's about,
Yeah, that's what it's about. I actually have 2 ladies that work for me right now, both riding horse girls that have had no racehorse experience, and I'm throwing them right into it. One Anna, woman, she's 17, and I had her out jogging the 3rd day that she was working for me. I'm so excited to have new women in the industry, for them to have opportunities like me.
And just the articulation, how you present yourself, and just all these pictures. I mean, it's amazing, just the experiences you've had until this point in your life. Only better things are going to happen. So is there anybody in the industry, obviously besides your family members have helped you, is there anybody in the industry besides Dr. Ian Moore and others that you want to give a special shout-out to?
Definitely Ian Moore. Casey Coleman as well. I've looked up to her for years. She's self-made. She does so well, but she's so helpful. If you have any questions or just want to pick her brain, she's so open to answer any questions or give advice. And yeah, she's been quite the role model for me. So definitely Casey.
Well, you're up in Canada. We're going to tap into some people down in the States now and see what they're up to on the East Coast. And hopefully we're going to get Rose Cushing with today's Horsewoman. But we really appreciate your time today. I really appreciate it. It took a couple scheduling reschedules, but we finally nipped it. Really, thank you again, Tisha.
Absolutely, Eric. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
All right, so we've got a woman traveling right now, I think coming back from the races, Jody Rydell. Jody, you there?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
So I guess, how did your day go today? You probably had a long day, waking up with the stable and training, and now I guess coming back from Pocono?
Yes, I'm on my way back from Pocono. I had the 9-hole today. It wasn't very profitable, but we got around there safe, and we're on our way home, so some days that's all you can hope for.
Okay, so we started to record and we had to re-record. We didn't really get into our conversation that much, but I did find out, I guess your mother is the matriarch of your family with one of your sisters. You have 2 sisters. I guess, how did Mom start everything? How did she get you guys into the business?
My dad got a horse and didn't tell my mother. His horse's name was Peter Pro, and that's when we used to have eligibility papers, and she took us to the drive-in, and they were over the visor, and she's looking, and she says, "What's a Peter Pro?" we knew about the horse, but we didn't say anything. So she went home to tell my dad. She says, Norm, what's a Peter Pro? Well, the cat was out of the bag then. And that was their first horse, and that's what got everything started. We went from 1 to 3 to 5 to 7, and so that's where it all started. My dad was one horse. He was a crane operator by trade and then got into the horses.
So was your mom the actual trainer, or were you guys more owners and then I guess you were helping out, or how did that work?
Yeah, my dad was down as trainer, and my mom helped at the barn, and my sister. And then when I was about 10, I got dogging my first horse, and I was hooked. I was hooked. I guess I got bit by the horse bug early.
And then I guess you were sharing responsibilities with your sister, or did you guys just do your own thing all the time?
Yeah, my sister, she pretty much did everything for my dad with his stable, and then she went on her own, and then I started working for like Brian Schroeder and a few people at Buffalo Raceway. I grew up in Elma, New York, and we raced mostly at Buffalo and Batavia Downs. And then, I started dating a horseman, and my dad and I got a horse together, and he ended up being like my first win, fair mutual win, and Denny Brainerd, he gave me a lot of my drives for my license. I drove probably more trotters than I did facers. But the first horse my dad and I owned together, Burma, he was pretty special. He's the one that I had sent you the picture of me driving, and he was my first pure mutual win.
So do you prefer the pacer, or do you prefer the trotter as a horsewoman? I mean, you have a different type of background. So is there one preference over the other, or does it matter? Doesn't really matter what the gait is?
Well, everybody loves the fast one. It doesn't matter if it's a fast trotter or a fast pacer. But I prefer the trotters myself. It takes a little more time and patience to race a trotter.
So then, I guess what got you into the outrighting? I guess you were 16 years as an outrider as well. I mean, what was that like?
Yes, I outrode for 16 years, different tracks, but I loved outrighting. I loved just meeting all the little kids on the fence and having them come out and pet the horse, even give them cookies. I'd carry peppermints in my pocket and let them feed the horse. And I really loved helping the drivers and being there for them, ponying the bad ones and catching the loose ones. And, I outrode at Pompano and Buffalo and Colonial, and I did the Syracuse Mile. So when my horses retired, I retired. I wasn't going to be breaking other horses to keep doing that job, but it was an honor to stand on the track.
We've talked with, Charlene Cushing, Sherry. We've talked with even Missy Rothfuss. We've talked now with Jasmine Arnold, and now we've got another veteran. What is it about your little sorority? I mean, is it something where you guys
we all have racehorses too, and I think that has helped us understanding the outrighting and what the drivers and the standardbreds kind of think. I know when Mr. Voorhees gave me the job at Pompano Park, there was a lot of applicants for the job, and he says, well, what makes you stand out? Why should I hire you? And a lot of the girls were from thoroughbred tracks, and I said, well, I work with standardbreds, so I'm used to the race bikes, I'm used to the equipment, and I know what how the standardbred thinks and what the drivers need. And I think that helped us. I think it's helped all of us, actually.
But like when you were outrighting back then, social media wasn't as prevalent, I guess, and word doesn't get out as quick. But you would still find out about things at other racetracks because you'd see video through simulcast and what have you. Were you always calling each other up and critiquing each other or giving each other advice?
No, not so much back then. Not when I was.
Or you kind of held you would say you kind of held to your own
job, really.
Would you hold to your own track, and then just people around your track would talk to you and say, hey, nice catch, or hey, you could have done this, or was it more like that?
Yes.
So, what do you think now about what you hear these days when, there's a spill or there's a catch or an outrider did something fantastic? Like, what is your first impulse, being an outrider previously of 16 years? Like, what are your thoughts? Like, what are you thinking? Like, do you want to call Jasmine up and say, hey, nice catch? Do you want to call Missy up and, hey, do you feel you need to do that? Or you just kind of sit back and be like,
Oh, no, absolutely, because I've been in those shoes before and understand the excitement that's you really don't think about the job till you have to do it, you catch the horse, and after, your knees don't shake till after a lot of times. I think that, oh my God, I really could have been hurt doing that. You just think about helping whoever needs you to help them at that time. I guess kind of like a fireman or whatever. You're just doing your job then. But of course you want to, give that person a congratulations and you did a great job and everybody's safe and the horses. People don't. It's the riders, but with that job, I don't care what kind of a rider you are. If you don't have a good horse underneath you to do the job, they really make you look good.
And then how long, I guess, would it take you, to train a horse from when you first get it to make it, durable enough or ready enough to be out there on the track, regularly to be your outrider horse? I mean, is there a name for it? Is it called an outriding horse? I mean, what's the term you guys use?
Parade pony or outriding pony.
Okay.
Martial horse. You don't know. You have to know the horse's temperament and try them. And some of them can't be. Some of them just don't have the mentality to be out there and to be around the whips and the horses that are going by them fast and then go out the next race. It's the difference now compared to when I outrode. There used to be a lot of fans in the stands. So we were out, we were there for the look along with to help the drivers or, heaven forbid there was an accident or something, that we had to catch a loose one. So we actually used to fray down and, be there for the fans' eye as well. Now pretty much a lot of the tracks will have the outrider there just in case there's an accident or the pony or because they have to get these races off on time. So have the delays.
So you're saying it was more. You're saying it was more like showmanship and public relations and being there more for the look and having more. I don't want to say you had more skills from a horsemanship standpoint, but you were doing other things besides just the outrighting. You were doing the marshalling. You were doing the parading, getting dressed up in the outfits, the red, white, and blue, the flags, the posts, the this, the that. I mean, am I right there?
Yes. Correct.
And that's what makes you and Sherry and some of these other women she's been referring so different from what they're doing these days. I mean, do you find that there's more loose horses these days? If I can ask that.
No, I can't say that there's any more or any less accidents happen. I think it's important that that a lot more ponying. Keeping the bad hot horses quieter and making sure some of the, good. I'm sorry.
No, so we had a little disconnection. We're still recording. You were talking about the hot horses and keeping them quieter. We're just going to keep plowing through this interview.
Okay. Yes, with the simulcasting that they have now, and you have to be off when the starter calls them. They have to get to the gate and go because the delay with the simulcasting, they want you, to go off at a certain time. Before we didn't have all that. If when I used to outride back in the day. Now I'm really dating myself, but it was more to be there for more public relations and to be there, to represent the racetrack and the parade and the people on the fence, out watching the races. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the people are up at the casino.
Well, that's the thing. So if you're saying if there was more people out there and there was more people coming to the track and watching the horses, then that might come back more because the showmanship's not there. We know that.
Right.
There's not the attendance like we had.
But
So
most important now, because a lot of tracks don't have outriders anymore, and they're so important for the drivers and for the horses and for the owners that have bought those horses to keep them safe. So it's a very important job that goes really unrecognized, and how important it really is. I don't know if people really realize how important it is to have a good outrider, not just a outrider, but a good outrider.
well, we got a lot of them out there these days. We've been interviewing a bunch of them. We look forward to interviewing some more. But is there anybody in the industry you want to give a special shout out to, I guess, besides your mother and your father? Anybody else that you've learned from or has helped you, I guess, throughout the years?
Oh, my sister Donna Rydell, she trains a small stable in Pompano, and she'll come up back home to Batavia for the summer. She's been probably my, my biggest idol. She's, we learn from one another and still ask one another questions. And so I'd like to just give a shout out to my sister Donna Rydell and tell her how much I love her.
There you go. True familyship within horsemanship, and we appreciate your time. And you have yourself a great ride back, and we'll be in touch.
Well, thank you so much for this interview. I appreciate the time that you gave me the time to do it.
All right, so we had another really interesting discussion, but now we've got a horsewoman that kind of does it all. Allie, are you there?
I am here.
All right, so we've got, if I can say this correctly, Allie Scovera, and you're up in the
You got it.
New York region known as, is it Binghamton?
Binghamton, that is where I am.
All right, so what generation horsewoman are you?
I am a first generation, actually, because none of my family is in the horse racing industry.
So where did you get your first start, I guess, in the business? How old were you? And I guess, did you just jump right in? Or, who'd you start with? And, what's your history until today?
So my family, our family property, actually butts up to a standardbred facility, which is Windy Hill Farm, and it's up in Binghamton. And when I was a little kid, I was 9 years old, and I just really fell in love with horses. I was really interested in them because basically they were in my backyard. And I would just go up to the fence line and kind of gaze at the horses. And finally my mom said, do you want to go up there? Do you want to learn about horses? And that's all I wanted to do. So my mom took me and introduced me to the lady who owned the farm, and her name was Nina Simmons. And that's kind of where my start began. I, started, just cleaning the barn and cleaning stalls when I was a little kid, and I kind of worked my way through it. I was there until I left for college when I was 18. And Nina did a little bit of everything. She bred mares here and there over the years. At the time, she kind of primarily focused in training also. So I kind of dabbled in all the different aspects. And
but you were doing these at a young age. I mean, what you just said, that's kind of, I'm not going to say in a negative way, but that's kind of insane. I mean, from 9 to 18, you were doing all the responsibilities with this kind of big-time breeder?
Well, I wouldn't say I was doing all those responsibilities.
But you were being exposed to them.
Obviously, I was in school, so, after school, you'd be in the barn. You'd be doing the basic chores. We'd clean stalls. We'd bring in horses at the end of the day. Weekends were a different story because there was no school, so we'd feed early. You'd jog, and then you'd put away the horses and then back to the field for the day until evening chores started again.
But you were learning
and
that
then,
you were learning that regime from Mrs. Simmons, so she was more of like your mother in the industry, let's say, or like your protege. You know, like she was the one that was like guiding you and teaching you these things. But at that young age, so then what happened after school? I mean, were you just working then for other people, or then how'd you delve off and what you do next?
so when I turned 18 and I went off to college, I went to Morrisville State. I majored in equine science, but I ended up changing majors midway through. So I ended up minoring in equine science with a major concentration in business management. And when I was in Morrisville, Vernon Downs was not that far from Morrisville, so I ended up buying a racehorse because I had a lot of free time on my hands. And I kind of took on training at that point on my own. And so that's kind of where I went, the training side of it, so to speak. During the summers, because I only had one horse at the time, I worked for various trainers and on the backside of Vernon Downs. I worked for Chuck Pillsbury 1 year, and then I worked for Ray and Sue Van Driesen. Kind of worked with different stables, learned a lot of different things. Some of them were baby stables. So I learned that aspect, and then some of them were aged racehorses, so I learned that aspect. Before I ended up coming back here I guess I moved back about 9 years later, back in like 2011, 2012 area, I moved back to the Binghamton region.
So now you're like in your upper 20s, and you're getting a little bit older, and now it's like, what happens next? I mean, have you met your husband as of yet then, or are you guys dating yet?
So, no, we hadn't actually met. I, kind of actually was married to another person prior to the husband I'm married to now, who absolutely had nothing to do with racehorses, knew nothing about it. My mother had fallen ill at the time,
Wow.
and I moved back into our home that we grew up in to care for my mom. And it basically brought me right back into the horses, because for a long time I had kind of, stepped out of the horse industry. And when she got sick, it just brought me right back to it.
So you're back at your childhood home, and the Simmons stable, and Mrs. Simmons, is she still there then? Or did you start working with them again?
So she is still there. She's pretty much retired. She is, the person who bred and raised the horse Golden Receiver. So she has retired, but her farm is very much still there and in existence. She had a lot of horses. She wasn't training anymore, but there was still horses on the farm, mostly retired standardbreds that were looking for new homes, or, were looking to retire out and go a different direction in a different career. So I helped place a lot of those horses at the time.
So it's just got you right back in.
I wanted my own and to get back into it.
Wow. So then is that what led you into today, I guess, more into the breeding operation, the breeding side of the business?
That is correct. Yep, it brought me right full circle. I had a couple of my own horses over the years, and when they retired out, I decided it was time to breed them, and raise a new generation.
So then I guess, how many stallions do you have? What's your broodmare band look like? Are you looking to build it?
I have no stallions. I focus on all New York bred mares, however. And there's about 20 mares here on the farm now.
Wow.
Most of them, I have a variety of clients, I guess I should say. Some of them are owners that have horses with my husband now, which have, horses in training that they've sent us mares to breed. Some of them are my own personal mares that I have, raised over the years and retired, and now they're brood mares for me. I do have some outside owned horses that are just here to be bred, to New York stallions.
So you're doing all these things, and you're married, and you now have 2 kids.
Yes.
How do you right now it's Saturday evening. Can we just stop and have a breather? What was your day like today? I mean, you have 2 kids, you're running a stable, you got foals, you got your husband, you got to run the house, you got to feed everybody. I mean, what's it like?
It's a pretty crazy day. Most days start really early.
I try to, get everything fed horse-wise before Joe leaves in the morning to go to his barn, because he has a stable. I think there's about 25 down there. So I get mine fed before he leaves, so that I can be in here to help be with the kids for the bulk of the morning before I cart them outside and we start chores. And we start in the barn, and every morning is totally different, because when you're on a farm, you never know what's going to be thrown at you. This morning I had a sick mare, that started at 6:45 this morning, and then it became, get chores done, run and get a pallet of feed, to get back to the farm to wait for a vet before I had to take the pallet of feed down to the track for, my husband's stable, to get back here to clean all my stalls, to get ready for evening chores, check mares. I had a mare to breed. Every day is kind of a crazy day.
I mean, you've got foals dropping, don't you? If you've got 20 brood mares, they've got to be dropping, every other day, every 3 or 4 days? What?
So I have a lot of barren mares that were maidens this year that have been bred. I do have one foal on the ground now, and I have 2 that are due within, days. One is actually overdue, and the other one should be dropping here any minute. So they're keeping me busy. Like I said, I don't really know what every day is going to throw at me, but I do know that these 2 mares should be giving me some foals here any minute. If they could just give up their hostages, I would be really happy.
But your husband has people that work underneath him, and you have people that work with you. I mean, it's not just the 2 of you running, a 20 broodmare band operation all by yourself, and him with the 25 head at the stable, right? I mean, there's others involved, hopefully, here, right?
So my husband has a group that works for him, a great group of employees that work down there. I guess there's 5 or 6 employees.
Okay.
That we have down there.
I hope so.
But in terms of the farm, it's just me.
Really?
I run the farm deal because of COVID and what transpired there. Before I decided to kind of focus all of my attention on the breeding side of it, I did work for my family in a construction business. And once COVID hit, it kind of forced my hand at staying home with my little ones because of daycare and restrictions. So now I just do the brood mares by myself. And, it's a full-time job, but I do enjoy it. So,
but do you think you have more of an advantage because, you're able to do it yourself? You're able to put, your fingers in there and do it the right way, the way that you were taught, the way that you know? I mean, do you see a difference? And I don't want to say so much the quality of, what you're showing, but, if you do it yourself, do you see that difference? If you're paying attention to those broodmares and you're the one, there? Because I notice those differences with some of these people that drop foals for people. There's a difference when you do it yourself.
I do feel as though I have the advantage because I don't have a large herd. I have what I have, and I know my mares well enough to know when they don't look right or something is wrong with them, or, this breeding is different from the last breeding because of how they felt. So I do feel that I have, a little bit of an advantage there. I don't have to explain things because I already know what they look like the last time I bred them, so to speak. So, that aspect of it is easier for me. And, I don't want to say that, I'm having a better year than I've had in years prior, but I do feel like on some level, because it's all in my control, that I am able to have a different outcome than years prior.
Exactly, because you're getting more into it yourself. So, it appears like it seems like it all comes full circle with this Mrs. Simmons, and you're just being exposed to this certain aspect of the business at such a young age. Most people don't get that opportunity. So, anybody else besides Mrs. Simmons, I guess, in the industry that you want to give a special shout out to, that you want to thank, I guess, from over the years?
I have worked for a lot of great trainers. When I was coming up through the rankings, the Harmon stable has been really great to me over the years. Patty and Rob Harmon, they're awesome people. Rob has taught me a lot. Patty is an exceptional human being in general when it comes to just business on the horse industry in general. So it's really, good to have people like that out there. Nina has been awesome over the years, with her knowledge that she has passed on to me. Charlene Cushing, she's been a friend of mine since she was 14 years, I was 14 years old at Monticello Raceway. And, she shared a lot of her knowledge over the years, and that has certainly been a huge help.
All right. Well, we really appreciate your time and your insight. And like we said, it's so amazing how horsewomen these days are just taking the responsibilities on of being housewives, but, being a mother of two and running a breeding operation with 20 head. Wow. We really appreciate your time, though. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So we had some really nice conversations once again with some pretty interesting horsewomen. One from Canada and North America, and another one from the States in New York. But next, we've promised to have this nice discussion with Rose Cushing. Rose, you there?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
All right. So where are you exactly right now? Everybody wants to know.
Well, I live in Middlesex, North Carolina, which is a teeny tiny town about 20 miles east of Raleigh.
Okay. So if you had to travel, you just jump on a plane out of Raleigh and you can go anywhere. So everybody wants to know, what generation horsewoman are you?
Well, I'm the first person in my family to be in love with horses. So it was kind of a rude awakening for my folks when I fell in love with them, because they were afraid of them for the most part and weren't real excited about me getting into horses. But as time went on, they realized that it was a passion that I wasn't going to outgrow. And I got my first pony when I was about 12, and I've had horses ever since.
Wow. Is there a preference of a breed that you like? We'll get into the obviously different breeds that you're involved with, but what specific breed, do you prefer? Like, I prefer black Arabians. People don't know that. What's your preference?
I prefer quarter horses because I raised them. Black horses are my favorite color. And I do a lot of black-based horse breeding, so I can produce buckskins and bays and blacks, and an occasional gray.
So do you actually have like a broodmare band? Like, do you actually breed horses?
Oh yeah, I have a farm called Half Moon Farms, and we stand 3 stallions, and we have about 6 broodmares, and then we breed to the outside a little bit to our friends. And we've been doing that since about 2008, I guess.
I didn't even know that you were a breeder, to be completely, blunt here. I didn't even know that you were a breeder. So, when you were younger, did you have like cats or dogs? Were you breeding animals when you were younger before you did this in 2008?
I love all animals, and I never really raised anything except I did raise labs and Rottweilers for a while, but the horse breeding came about through my mentor, Wayne Newcomb, and he raises quarter horses, and I was fascinated by the different things that you do. It's such a science, and you have to really learn how to do it and what bloodlines cross well, and how to pick a mare and a stallion to get a good-looking baby in the end, and how to breed for color and good sense. And that's how I got started. And the babies, when they come, my whole world stops, because we have a new baby that day, and it's just the most wonderful thing in the world.
But are they all quarters?
Yeah, I did raise paints for a while, and I love the paints too, because the paints, you never know what the pattern will be, so that's always like a surprise Christmas package. But the quarter horses have been the easiest thing for me to breed, and they sell very well.
Got it.
So they're pretty much all around. I raise Pitzer Ranch horses, and Pitzer Ranch is a very famous ranch for producing good all-around stock. So all of my horses are Pitzer Ranch bloodline.
But you're playing like that crapshoot game. You don't know what you're going to get when the foal comes out. And like you were saying before I interrupted you, it's the best feeling in the world to see the foal. So you want to describe for everybody, being a breeder of your size down south, what it's like, to have a foal. Just the preparation involved, even before you see your first, The
first time that I had the first baby coming, they always usually come at night, so I would miss it most of the time because I didn't want to bother the mare with cameras. A horse is an interesting creature in that it's the only animal in the world that can stop its labor. And if it feels threatened, it'll just stop. So I had about 4 or 5 foals, and I decided that I was going to see the next one. And the paint horse
that I sent you a photo of was my favorite girl, and I just got a chair and sat out there by her pen, and I said, I'm going to wait, Patches, until you have this baby. So, of course, she didn't. And I finally had to go in the house to go to the restroom, and when I came back out, there was the baby. So that was just so exciting. And when they come, their hooves are like feathers, and I didn't know that. So I just started crying, and I called Wayne, and I said, oh, my God, my baby's here, and it's beautiful, but it's deformed. And he just laughed and laughed and laughed and said, no, Rose, by the time you get back outside, it'll be okay. And it was. They hard dried up, and it stood up, and it was great.
You learned hard and fast. So
it's just a cool feeling to see that new life come in the world and be a blank canvas.
did you ever get into, like, professional riding, competitive riding? Were you in, like, 4-H club? I mean, these are all things that people wonder about with you because, you do so many different breeds, which we're going to get into. Like, what were you involved with, I guess, growing up?
Really, just trail riding, but I never saw a horse I didn't love, and the older I got, the more I wanted to do something in the horse industry. And I had a background in journalism, and I worked at newspapers. So I started out by doing my own magazine, Southeast Hoofbeats, which was a 10-state regional publication that we printed for many years.
Wow.
And we covered every breed and every discipline. And a lot of folks didn't think it would be successful because they didn't think saddlebred people would want to read about paint horses. But I told them the one thing we all have in common is that we love a horse.
That's right.
And it doesn't matter what your horse is or what he looks like. You love him, I love mine, and we have something in common.
Exactly.
So the magazine did really well. But print as a whole, was on the decline. In the meantime, we got involved with television, and the North Carolina Horse Council gave me a development grant to buy equipment, and I started the first weekly TV show in North Carolina that was exclusively about North Carolina horse people. And that's still running. We've been on the air for 9 seasons.
And what's that show called?
Carolina Hoofbeats TV.
Okay.
So on every major streaming network as part of the Farm and Ranch TV network.
But isn't there something else you had, like modern something, or?
Yeah, we did a child's TV show for a couple of years called Modern Horseman, and I wanted to encourage youth and get them involved in the sport. So I found a really sweet girl, Emily Grace Swenson, and she was the host, and we interviewed kids and talked about kids and riding and showing and all of those things. And that was really
everything's
cool.
kind of involved till today, literally.
Uh-huh.
What's going on with today?
Well, all of that kind of evolved into a documentary film that we won that was about the hurricane and how it affected the equine industry. We won an International Equestrian Film Festival award for that. And then I decided to try podcasting. I'm a good fan of the lady who is the editor for Garden and Gun magazine, Rebecca Darwin. And she wrote a book called The 100 Most Influential Business Women in the South. And when I read it, I said, wow, we don't have anything like this for the horse industry. And if you're not a hunter-jumper person, you don't know that Peggy McElveen is amazing and has won the Pioneer Award, and that's an award they don't even give out every year. Or you don't know that Virginia Godwin in the Arabian world won Horsewoman of the Year multiple times. So I wanted people to know about all of these women who had had good success, and also about the women who keep the industry rolling, like the 4-H leaders and the show moms. So I decided I would travel around and I would interview all kinds of women in the horse industry and put their stories out there so that people could learn about them. Because the horse industry is so vast that you can do anything you want to do. I have a friend that's a lawyer that specializes in equine. I have an accounting buddy that she's a CPA and she does farm stuff. So no matter what you want to do, you can tie your love of horses into it.
Very interesting.
We launched a podcast about 2.5 months ago. It's called Today's Horsewoman.
Well, that was the next question. So, this is how we kind of met. How would you describe? I mean, I'm a pretty avid, social media person. People that know me personally know that I'm more of a face-to-face person like yourself. But, I find things. But how did, I guess, you get involved with or introduced to the Horseman's Voice? Did you know about me from back in the early 2000s? Did you know about the Horsemen's with an E voice based out of New Mexico, that publication? I mean, there's got to be some tie-in somewhere here.
Sure. Well, when I was researching horse podcasts, then I found the Horseman's Voice, and I listened to some of your episodes, and that's how I discovered you.
But did you know about the woman that runs the Horsemen's with an E voice out of New Mexico? Because she's had her publication, I think, since 1977 or 87, I think. Something with a 7, don't quote me. But, we started to communicate, and I am interested in interviewing women because they're part of the sport. Like, I'm interviewing, other aspects and other demographics, like the Latinos and the boys from down south. I mean...
Right. Well, women make up 85% of the horse industry.
And people don't know that.
I did my research for the podcast.
People don't know that.
Yeah, there's not a podcast in the entire world that's only about women, for horsewomen.
I mean, with the harness industry, you've got a male trainer, but the woman's doing all the work.
Yeah.
I mean, literally at home and with the kids and running the stable, doing the accounting. I mean, these are the things that I've seen and I've experienced, and now I don't want to say it in a negative way, but I'm exposing it and showing people, like, the women are the backbone of this industry.
Absolutely.
People don't want to admit it.
Itself,
well, harness at least. But,
35, 60-year-old women.
Okay. And they do the brunt of the work, too. They're the ones that are caretaking for the horses.
Right. And a lot of times, women have horses when they're young, and then they have their kids, and they kind of taper away from horses for a while. And then when they get a little older, they have money and time, and they go back to horses, and they try a lot of things that they had never had the opportunity to do. So this is a big industry.
Let's just jump right into the marketing aspect.
Sure.
You want to do this, I think it was called Sprout. I started talking about Spreaker. There's all these other, I guess, interfaces that we've discussed and what have you. I mean, you're doing other things, though. Like, I see you on Apple and, like, you're on other channels. Can you explain to people, from an educational standpoint for the kids that are listening, if they want to start something, if they want to do something, what would you recommend?
I started the podcast, and I didn't know very much about it. How to do it, but I do a TV show, so I figured I could learn. And Buzzsprout was a site that was recommended to me by one of my techie friends, and it's a really easy site. You can do it actually for free, if depending on how many hours of time you need to upload a month. But Buzzsprout hooks you up with all of the other folks like Amazon and Apple and iHeartRadio and all those folks, and then they listen to your podcast, and if they like what they hear, they include you in their lineup. So it gives you a broad coverage pretty easily. You don't have to be too technical savvy.
So it's kind of like a Hootsuite, like with Twitter, where you hook up and you can, launch different things on different channels by hooking up the different things. But the way that you're saying is this is all integrated, I guess, in one interface. What obstacles, I guess, did you see, if I can ask? Like, did you look at those other ones, like Blog Talk Radio? Because I looked at that. It was good back in the day. Their interface now, I'm going to say it sucks. And I'm looking now at Spreaker. Spreaker is pretty powerful, but it doesn't, I don't think, have these aspects that you're talking about, see?
Well, that was one of the selling points for the Buzzsprout. I looked up the top 10 podcast and hosting sites, and then I went on each one and I looked at them. And my husband, Rodney, is very, very smart, and he does all of our editing and things, and so he looked at them too, and we decided that Buzzsprout was a low-cost, little bit of risk way to get into podcasting in case this was a big flop, because you never know. But we've done 10 episodes, and we've had over 600 downloads, and downloads are kind of a tricky thing because a download doesn't mean how many people are listening, but they have no way to gauge how many people listen. So the stuff that I read said if you had 100 downloads in your first 30 days, you had a hit. And so we've averaged about 220 each month. So I feel like we're on a good roll.
Well, I mean, everything starts out small. It's all about baby steps. With us, we strategize and we make it where people don't know how many people are listening to this. Like, our plan we discussed, and we can discuss this right now, is, I'm going to try to get the audio to you right away. We do this at the Horseman's Voice. I'm going to try to produce this thing tonight. It's now Thursday, the 25th of March. You're going to have this in your hands tomorrow morning, and let's see what it does over the weekend. And then, boom, Monday, we're going to release it from the harness standpoint, but now the question is, Rose, should I hit my database of 5,000 people? Do you want me to just blow it up? Because, the last couple episodes, I promised Freddie that I would do this, and I didn't do it. I promised the guys from down south. We haven't touched our database. So those that are listening out there, we're ready to rock. The question is, what's your frequency? Are you going every week? Are you going bi-weekly? Would you recommend monthly? Does it depend on content, structure, time?
I produce it every week. I release it on Tuesday. I shoot for 20 minutes because the average person listens to a podcast on their commute, and most people's average commute was 20 minutes. The highest rated podcast that I've done was an hour and 10 minutes, but her story was fascinating.
Wow.
And we had more downloads than anybody I've done. So, and I market it through the horse channels. I'm in about 100 horsemen's groups on Facebook, and I use Twitter. And that's probably been one of the best ways to do it, is to get involved in groups, and then you can put your stuff out there. I build a website for it, today'shorsewoman.com, and then I put it on all of my media pages for my other businesses, my TV page, my magazine page. I do trade shows and expos, so they all have pages.
Well, you're out there, you're established, you're branded. I mean, we had a break, and I'm more behind the scenes. You like to be out there, like we were talking earlier, and face to face in front of people, and just being, I guess, the face now of today's horsewoman. What are, I guess, real quick, we're gonna have to end up here soon, but what do you see the future of where do you see this going? I mean, it's just building and building and building.
Today's Horsewoman will evolve into a book, because these stories really need to be in permanent history. I think that, I interview up-and-coming young horsewomen as well as seasoned veterans, and I think it's a good roadmap for anybody in the industry that really wants to be part of the industry. And I ask all of these folks, what's your advice to somebody up-and-coming? How do they make their mark in the world? And so they've all given their advices, and ironically, most of them's advice is be true to yourself.
That's right.
But there's so many good stories in there, how to juggle being a mom and kids and a job and, in the horse industry, and how to make money at it, and what did you do wrong, and just super good tidbits of help.
All the different small aspects of different things that are incorporated in, I guess, running a stable and having horses and just being involved whatever way you are. Is there anybody in the industry that you want to give like a special shout out to? I mean, you mentioned this mentor earlier, your husband, who does a lot of work with you, I guess, with production and editing and what have you. Is there anybody else out there you want to say a special hi or shout out to?
Having your show.
I'm sorry?
Thank you for having me on your show.
Well, it's just, we talk about this with other people. It's like everybody has to start coming together. We talked earlier. There's going to be some type of metamorphosis or some type of transformation here, but, who's going to control it? Is it going to be involved with the government? Is it going to just be a movement? Is it, just this whole thing with COVID and everything's going online, things are more viral? Who knows?
Right.
Who knows? And this is going to be released tomorrow, the 25th of March. You're going to have it out there and, the rest of the weekend. We'll see what it does. And then we'll come out Monday. We'll do, maybe an email blast in the middle of the week. And then we'll have more stuff coming out at the end of the week. And we'll see where it goes.
I think that'll be great.
But I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your insight, your knowledge, your skill set. I mean, it sounds like if you just, like we're doing, you just take those baby steps and just grow it slowly or organically, like you're saying. You meet the people face to face. That's the industry. That's how we are. But I really appreciate your time. And this will end, I guess, this bi-weekly episode of The Horseman's Voice for now. We'll see what we're going to have coming up soon. It might be a little bit quicker than the last episode. And again, Rose, we thank you for your time.
Thank you, and thanks for listening, folks.